Great. Thank you for waiting, and thank you again to Mordechai and Raya for hosting and editing and posting this shir, Bezrat Hashem, and all the other shirim. And of course, thank you to Rabbi Diamond for organizing this special shir and the special shirim in conjunction with the difficult, challenging time in which we find ourselves now. One of the points that we seem to struggle with is how to deal with the current situation, the terrible massacre that occurred 2.5 weeks ago. Where did this come from? How do we deal with it? It's on such a huge magnitude that so since we're dealing with this such a major attack on Eretz Yisroel and on Am Yisrael, there must be something really special that we can do to deal with this situation. And so tonight is a very, very special day, which we're going to try to elaborate on in just a moment. Tonight will be the Yud Aleph Cheshvan, the 11th of Cheshvan, which is the yahrzeit of the one and only Mother Rachel Imeinu, the mother of one of the four matriarchs, and for everybody, she's definitely a symbol of a Yiddish mame, a Jewish mother who cares about all of her children, as we'll see soon. Not only when she was alive, but for all generations to come. Therefore, many people try to go to her kever, Rachel Imeinu's kever. This year, unfortunately, because of the situation, many people who usually go will probably not be able to go. But at least we live with her inspiration, and we do our best to connect to her neshama tonight and tomorrow and beyond. I just want to check one thing. I want to tell a story, but it's on another window on my phone. Please give me a moment. Okay, can you please tell me if you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Okay, beautiful. Yesher koach. There's a very, very moving story that I want to share with you that happened 2.5 weeks ago in the kibbutz of Be'eri on the border of Gaza. There's a woman that lived there. Her name is Perach Pilu. Now, this kibbutz of Be'eri was established in 1946, and it's the closest kibbutz to the border with Gaza, from amongst 11 kibbutzim over there. The Shabbat before the terrible massacre in Be'eri, which over 100 of its residents were murdered, over 100 evil Nazi jihadists from the Hamas made a terrible pogrom in Be'eri and in other kibbutzim, in other yeshuvim. Perach is 75 years old. Her parents were Holocaust survivors, and they came to Israel in 1957. At the time, Perach was 13 years old. Her parents had come from a traditional home, but unfortunately, as a result of the Shoah, the family had become very distant from Yiddishkeit. Perach herself did not lead a life necessarily of any specific dati, of religion, but her daughter became a Baalat Tshuva, and she became a Chabadnik. She got married, and she has a Chabad family somewhere here in Israel. And her son is also a Chabadnik, and he's actually a Shaliach in Berlin. 6:30 in the morning, there were the sirens, and Perach had been sitting on the couch in her home. And when she heard the sirens, she grabbed a half a bottle of water, which was next to her, and a thick blanket, and she ran to the shelter in her home. She had only 15 seconds to reach the shelter. In the beginning, she was very afraid when she heard a barrage of rockets going over her head. And it did not take a lot of time. And on the app from her friends in the kibbutz of Be'eri, she started seeing messages that there are terrorists running around in Be'eri. And she started hearing shooting all around, screaming in Arabic. And according to the messages from the app, she knew exactly where the terrorists were. One of the things that she learned from her Chabadnik grandchildren was the power of positive thought. And somehow she found in her this was all told by her herself in the last couple of days. She was taught by her, somehow she found a little notebook in her shelter that she had written for herself a little memo. And she writes as follows: I am safe. My parents were Holocaust survivors. And I know that Hashem is guiding over me. Thank you, Hashem, for everything you do for me. Thank you to the Rebbe of Lubavitch that's davening for me. And to all of the Hasidim of his that are certainly davening for me, I'm safe. That's a quote. She remembered that in her shelter, she has a little package that her grandchildren gave her. In this little package, she has a picture of the Rebbe, a book of Chitat, which this book's Chitat are 3 Hebrew letters. Chet, Taf, Taf. It stands for Chet. It stands for Chumash. Taf stands for Tehillim, and the other Taf stands for Tanya. And she put the picture of the Rebbe right near her heart, and also the book of the Chitat. And she said, while she's frightened, sitting in the shelter, she said, Rebbe, now you are responsible for my heart, and I know that I will be okay. All of this is happening while she was sitting in the pitch dark. Well, it wasn't pitch dark at the time because there was a little window, but it was definitely dark. She did not want anyone to see that there's someone inside. Here we go. In the darkness, she found a few cookies, and being that the screaming and the shooting was only getting stronger and stronger, she understood with her healthy senses that she's probably going to be in the shelter for a long time. So she divided the cookies that she found that it should keep her for at least a day. 2 for breakfast, quote unquote, 2 for the afternoon, and 2 for the evening. As you remember, she only had a half a bottle of water, so each time that she ate something, she drank a little bit of water, so she should be able to save the water. It should stay for a while. In the meantime, she called her son, Oren, who lived outside the kibbutz somewhere, not too far away, and he said, Imale, I'm coming to save you. She was very happy to hear that. And a little while passed, and he asked her to send him by WhatsApp the location of where she is. Another little bit amount of time, she says, he writes to her, Imale, I'm part of one of the elite units of the IDF. There are 3 tanks that are coming to save you. A little time passed, and she did not hear anything. In the meantime, she keeps on reminding to herself what she had written in the notebook that we said earlier. I am safe, and I have a safe surrounding. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you to my Rebbe, and thank you to all of those that are davening for me. The time passed, and the battery of her phone was finished. So she was left there alone, in the darkness, without a phone. And then, coming into her home, Baruch Hashem, 10 years earlier, approximately, there was a different attack by terrorists. She decided to put a very strong lock on the door of her shelter. And she understood that without the lock, the shelter is not going to help much. The terrorists tried to open the door of the shelter, but they were not successful. They shot at the door. They used all kinds of explosives. But for some reason, no way, they were not able to open this door. They went to the window, they tried to break it, they were not successful. And she's sitting in the corner quietly, hoping that no one realizes that she's there, and repeating to herself this mantra thousands of times. In other words, keeping her good thought, think good will be good, keeping this positive thought in her mind, that's what kept her going. All of a sudden, she started to remember that her son Oren did not come. Why didn't he come? Maybe, God forbid, something happened to him. And then her bitachon, her trust in Hashem, started to become a little shaky. But then a little more time passed, and once again, she encouraged herself, she strengthened herself that everything is going to be good. In the meantime, in her house, there was a war. Later on, she found out that there were 12 terrorists hiding in her home. And the Chayalim, our soldiers, were unable to overcome the terror. So our soldiers brought a bulldozer in order to destroy the house. And that was the only way that they would be able to overcome the terrorists. Then she hears how the bulldozer pounds on the roof of the house, totally destroys the house while she is inside. As an outcome of that, there was a crack in the door of the shelter, and Baruch Hashem, the terrorists did not recognize that. But there was dust that came in, and she has difficulties breathing, and it really bothered her. Dear friends, Perach sat in the shelter for 48 hours. After 2 days, on Monday morning, when there was already total silence, she decided to open the window in order to breathe a little bit fresh air. She tried to stand up on top of something in order to come closer to the window, but then she fainted. And she laid like that. She's not sure how long it was. She estimates around an hour and a half. Then when she woke up, she had a little more strength, and she decided to try to jump out of the window. But she didn't have shoes. Still in her nightgown, she threw the window onto the ground in order that her landing should be a little bit of a softer landing. She went up on the chair. From then on, she climbed onto some box with sewing kit, and it was next to the window. She jumped through the window. She thought she's going to fall onto the grass, as she was used to, that there was supposed to be grass there. But it was filled with broken blocks from the building and from the all of the destruction that took place over there. And she hurt herself pretty badly from the fall. But she was able to lift herself up, and she still was on a blanket, and she was shocked to see that outside was totally quiet. She didn't recognize the place that she had lived in for decades. On the way, she found a bottle of water, mineral water. She drank a half a bottle, and that gave her some more koach, some more energy to continue walking. And then she found a little, um, not sure what it's called, a little wheelchair with a key, and it drives. You don't have to push it. Um, so she drove that until the gate of the kibbutz, and over there she saw soldiers, but she was still nervous that maybe they're not our soldiers. Maybe they're terrorists. She had no clue what's going on outside. She came a little closer, and she saw that they were our soldiers. And she screamed, Chayalim! Soldiers! She was so weak that in the beginning, they couldn't even hear her. But then when the Chayalim recognized an elderly woman, they ran to her, they bandaged her, and they helped her out. Her first request was to call her son Oren. That she was so worried about what happened to him. And it turned out that when he came to the gate of Be'eri, the IDF did not allow him to go inside the kibbutz because of the terrible fighting, the war that was happening for 2 days. Within a few moments, they became reunited, and it's impossible to explain in words the tremendous simcha, the tremendous happiness that overcame the family. This is something which is heroic, and it's amazing to see how the be good is so real. To her, it was clear that the message that she had received from her grandchildren about positive thinking is clearly what kept her alive. It kept her going. It kept her energy. And first of all, this is one very important lesson that we can learn from this story, not just in theory, but in practice, that we should be able to think good even in the most difficult situations. Once we know that we have the ability to think good, then we know that Bezrat Hashem will bring about, and that it will be good as well. Now I'd like to go back to what I started off by saying, that tonight and tomorrow is going to be the yahrzeit of Mama Rachel, our mother, the mother of all of Am Yisrael, Rachel Imenu, Rachel, our matriarch. Why is Rachel considered to be such a special person, such a special personality? We have many great Jewish women who we have that can be an example for us of what it means to care for one's children in such a special way. In fact, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we say the Haftorah, which it says, Rachel mevakal banaha. Rachel cries for her children. What does Hashem tell her? Min'i kolech mibechi, withdraw your voice from cry, ve'enayich min dim'a, and your eyes from tears. Yesh sachar lifulatech. There is actions, vishavu banim ligvulam, and the children will come back to their boundary, to their area, which is a bracha that we give to the 222 of our brothers and sisters that are in captivity, that they should come peacefully and be'ezras Hashem immediately, if not sooner, back to us over here in Eretz Yisrael together with us. Amen. So when Hashem tells Rachel Imenu, Ki yesh sachar l'f'ulatech, there is a reward for your actions. What is the special action that we are so confident that because Rachel did this action, therefore we're going to have her mercy, motherly mercy upon us? What was so special that she did? So firstly, let me mention that when Rachel passed away, it was on the way in Beit Lechem, not so far from Yerushalayim. And Yaakov wanted to bury her over there. Now, all of the other patriarchs and matriarchs, including Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, and Leah, were buried in the Marat HaMachpelah in Hebron, Kiryat Arba, in the special place that Avram Avinu purchased from Ephron, and also Adam Rishon and Chava, Adam and Eve, are also buried there. It doesn't seem to be worthy for Rachel Imenu to be buried on the side of the way, as if, by the way, she passed away over there, so we're burying her there. So there are a number of reasons that we want to discuss today. Hopefully we'll get to them. But let's start with number one. Why was she buried over there on the side of the... The Rashi tells us in Parashat Vayechi that much later on, generations later, when Nebuzaradan exiled Am Yisrael, unfortunately, from Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael were on the way. They wanted to cry to Hashem. They wanted to be by a tzaddik, a righteous person that can intercede on their behalf. And so Rachel was right there on the way. And they cried. And Rachel Imenu, her neshama, came out and said, don't worry, I'm going to be with you. I'm never going to forsake you. And this is what a parent, especially a mother, is all about. Always to be there. Difficult situations. There are other reasons why she was buried there. Hopefully we'll get to them soon. But let's try to answer first the question that we asked just 3 minutes ago. Ki yesh sachar l'f'ulatech. Hashem tells Rachel, there is a reward for your actions. What were the special actions that Rachel did that deserves a special sachar, a special reward? This is unbelievable what I'm going to share with you now. When Yaakov came to his uncle Lavan, and it turns out that Yaakov fell in love with Rachel right away. And he wasn't exactly interested in marrying Leah. They planned a wedding. He actually worked for 7 years, anticipating to marry Rachel. But the problem was that Rachel and Yaakov both knew very well that Lavan was he was a liar and a thief, and he would trick people into all kinds of mean things. And so they were afraid that Lavan would take Leah and give Leah to Yaakov instead of Rachel. Don't forget, in those days, there was no light. Everything was pitch black. And so Yaakov and Rachel made up a code that after the wedding, and they're going to go to their home for the first time, that Yaakov will ask his bride for the code, and only Rachel will know the code. And if Lavan puts in Leah instead, then they'll know that it's the wrong bride. Our sages teach us what the code was. The code was the 3 Hebrew letters, the name Chana. Chana represents 3 mitzvahs of the Jewish woman that are special, exclusive for the Jewish woman. The Chet is Chala, baking Chala. The Nun is Neirot Shabbat, the candles of Shabbat. And the Hey is the mitzvah of family purity and the mitzvah of mikvah. So Chana represents all 3. That sounds like a pretty good code. A Jewish wedding. It came the day of the wedding. And of course, as they assumed, Lavan gave Yaakov Leah instead of Rachel. And what did Rachel do just before the wedding? She gave the code to Leah. She revealed the code to Leah. And then, of course, Lavan gave Yaakov also Rachel, and he had to work for another 7 years. So it's almost impossible. It's virtually impossible. But let's try to put ourselves in Rachel's shoes. Rachel really, really wanted to marry Yaakov. It wasn't just that her heart wanted to marry Yaakov. She realized that she is the if you will, the real spiritual mate, neshama mate, soul mate with Yaakov. So she knew that really she is the one that's supposed to marry Yaakov. What did she do? She did the unthinkable. She gave over, she revealed, she passed over the code that Yaakov gave her to her sister, which was not only giving up of her pride, and on the highest day and the greatest day of her life, she's marrying Yaakov at that pivotal moment. She gives over that code to Leah. It's just unfathomable. Now, it's not only that night. For the rest of her life, she sees every day how Leah is married to her husband. That is not a simple task. Sometimes Yaakov would go, of course, to Leah's tent. She was his wife as well. Usually he was with Rachel, but it's no question that Leah was also a wife of Yaakov. At what point, it says in one of the Sfarim that Rachel considered herself to be more, to be, let's start the sentence again, that Rachel considered herself to have had more self-sacrifice even than Avraham Avinu. And even than the other tzaddikim who gave their lives for Hashem. Of course, not to put anyone down. It's unbelievable, the ultimate sacrifice. But of Isaac, the Akedat Yitzchak. Okay, so it's definitely an unbelievable act, but it's one act, and then it's over. Someone that gives their life without putting it down, of course, It's one of the greatest things someone can ever do for Hashem. But they do the act. Of course, the act remains forever. I'm just saying that the act itself is a one-time thing. But here, every time that Rachel comes in the home, out of the home, her whole existence has Leah in front of her face for her entire life, day in, day out. That is something which is an act of chesed, which is unprecedented before or after. Her entire life was putting herself aside for her sister in order that her sister should not be embarrassed. Wow, that's unbelievable. To have such a great level of devotion, dedication, to put yourself aside on a constant basis. That is Rachel Imenu. That is exactly who Rachel is. Rachel Imenu is the one who stands there and cries on our behalf. She symbolizes every Jewish woman, every Jewish mother. And she teaches us what it means to be caring for everyone else, even if it's something that she's going to be missing out on, and living it day in, day out. She's willing to do that. For who? For the benefit of her sister, for the benefit of another Jew, for the benefit of another person. And so this is something which is an unbelievable lesson that we can learn on this special day. It's Erev, tonight, in a few hours, we'll begin her yahrzeit. On the day of Rachel Imenu's yahrzeit, our mother Rachel, this is a time for us to really put together our thoughts, for us to put aside all of our differences and perhaps, God forbid, heart feelings that we may have one for another, and to just do everything we can. I'm going to say it again. Everything we can to make another person feel good, to make another person feel that they care, feel that we care about them, to make another person feel that they count. It's worth the world. And that's Rachel Imenu. That's who she was. So I want to finish off with a nice anecdote. It's a painful anecdote, but it's still, I think, interesting, that there is an organization in Israel called Reshut Chirum Leumi, the Organization of National Emergency. And it's obviously, unfortunately, very, very active with all of our brothers and sisters that have been transferred from being on the in the border towns in the south and also in the north. A number of hotels right in our area, including entire Jerusalem, including entire Israel, are being run by this organization, Reshut Chirum Leumi. And I just want to connect it to Rachel Imenu, that it's not just a nice word, but it's something which is the ultimate, the spiritual, if you will, the spiritual Rachel, the spiritual Reshut Chirum Leumi, organization of national emergency, that when we will do our part on the spiritual level to forgive for someone else and put them in front of us, then Bezrat Hashem, Hashem will have Rahmanas on us. Hashem will have pity on us and mercy. Similar to Rachel Imenu, who she is famous for the one who cares about her children for generations to come, and Hashem will have mercy on us, bring us Mashiach, and an end to this horror which is still going on, and Hashem will protect our soldiers and all of our security personnel around Israel, and Bezrat Hashem will have Mashiach Tzidkenu, immediately right here in Yerushalayim. Thank you all very much.